Dracula, Frankenstein, Freddy Krugar. These are the things of pure nightmare fuel. Nightmares are why you wake up in the middle of the night, breathing like you just ran a marathon. Nightmares are not just dreams though, they are terrifying. But what is it about nightmares that make them so visceral, so ugh? In part, it has to do with their structure. Like, they may not make a ton of sense, but there is some semblance of a story to our nightmares. And those stories are deeply emotional in a way that a simple bad dream is not. As a result, they take on an almost mythic quality. If you have nightmares periodically, it can be disruptive, sure, but not necessarily a problem. But if they are recurring, well, that could point to a deeper issue. So let's talk about how nightmares occur, how they affect our sleep, and what to do if, like Michael Myers, they just refuse to die. Dreaming is one of the most complicated topics in sleep science. We really don't know much about it. We know people dream, we know when they dream, and anecdotally, we know those dreams can be blissful or straight up terrifying. But when do those dreams become nightmares? According to neurologist and sleep expert Dr. Chris Winter, the emotional triggers are what separates nightmares apart from just normal dreams.
I think that it's the emotional content, the emotional reaction to it that really creates sort of the nightmare versus dreamt I was at a pool having a beer, watching beautiful people walk by. Okay, nobody ever has that dream, by the way. It's always sort of an emotionally charged or sympathetic activity. You wake up and you're sweaty or your heart's racing, and so there's often fear and anxiety elements that go along with it.
In short, nightmares are bad dreams that wake you up because of their emotional triggers. Of course, nightmares don't have to involve monsters and giant spiders to be considered scary. Nightmares can be vivid dreams that are upsetting, threatening, bizarre, or just plain bothersome. And nightmares usually happen during a very specific time of night. You see, nightmares are more likely to occur during the REM stage of sleep, and you spend the most time in REM sleep during the second half of the night. So pair those vivid, emotional dreams with the night being at its darkest, you can see why they are terrifying. But there's also something specific happening in our bodies.
When you look at somebody who's in REM sleep, it looks a lot like somebody who's awake. If you take away the muscle tone and some of the eye movement and to show somebody the brain activity, it's tough to determine if somebody's awake or if they're dreaming.
So in REM sleep, our brain activity is as rapid as it may be during the day, processing the day's jumbled mess of events and feelings and thoughts. Then your body also experiences its own response.
You know, people often feel like, oh my God, I felt like I was running, like I'm checking my pulse and it's up. People can have sort of autonomic changes that go along with REM sleep that you don't see quite as often as you would in somebody who's in deep sleep.
So yeah, you wake up from a nightmare, out of sorts and with a spiked heart rate because your body is already going through a ton of processing work at night. But like, what about those dreams where you feel like you can't breathe or you feel like you're drowning?
It's like driving a car that doesn't have power brakes. You can hit the brakes, but man, you've got to push hard on that pedal to stop the car. And that's what happens when we paralyze a lot of the breathing. It makes it very difficult to expand our rib cage and breathe properly. So that feeling of suffocation, that feeling of difficulty breathing lends itself nicely to a dream where you've fallen out of a boat into water and you're trying to swim to the surface but can't quite get there.
It's important to note that nightmares are totally normal. Kids, teens, adults, older people, everyone has them. One study found that nearly half of all college students had one nightmare in the past 2 weeks. So if you're having nightmares about exams, don't worry, so are your classmates. Frequent nightmares are more common in kids than adults. They're most prevalent between 3 and 6 years old, but become less frequent as the child ages. In some cases, frequent nightmares will persist into adolescence and adulthood. However, they rarely ascend to the level of nightmare disorder. So we know why nightmares are happening and how common they are, but what's the point of them anyway? Do they serve any actual function other than just terrifying us for a few minutes? In general, dreams are our brains processing memories and ideas from throughout our day. It's necessary for repair and filtering the day's events.
Memory consolidations, you're trying to learn the piano and you're learning a difficult piece. But if you sleep on it and you wake up the next morning and sit down to play, oh wow, I really nailed it that time. Even though I haven't been practicing, I've just been sleeping. And that was a lot of Matt Walker's seminal work on sleep and memory that was like, here, learn this weird sequence and then sleep on it. You're probably going to do better on the sequence. So why pull an all-nighter when you're studying for an art history exam? That's hurting your ability to remember that, oh yeah, that was Titian, not Raphael, that painted that painting.
But even though nightmares are disruptive, they shouldn't railroad your sleep patterns. They shouldn't. If you're having frequent nightmares, that could be a different story. Between 2 and 8% of adults struggle with something called a nightmare disorder. They experience frequent sleep disruptions because of their nightmares, and that in turn affects their mood and focus during the day. This means you aren't getting enough sleep, but you aren't getting enough restful sleep either. Nightmares make people with nightmare disorders wake up feeling anxious. From there, it can be hard to calm down and go back to bed. Fear and anxiety about having nightmares can cause sleep avoidance. It's how the Elm Street kids avoided Freddy Krugar.
Don't fall asleep.
But plot twist. We all fall asleep eventually. Unfortunately, avoiding nightmares by not sleeping will only make them worse. Sleep deprivation will provoke what's called a REM sleep rebound. That means you'll nosedive into REM when you finally do sleep. The dreams get more vivid. The nightmares are even worse.
I think the biggest problem with nightmares when they're happening frequently is it creates a lot of negative. Why would you want to go to a situation where you're going to close your eyes and immediately you're in a black pit struggling to breathe? Or you see a lot in PTSD, individuals reliving that terrible situation over and over. Every time they close their eyes, I don't want to go to bed. I fear going to bed. I loathe going to bed because of what I'm going to experience. If it's affecting your relationship with sleep, I think that's where intervention is extremely important.
Sleep deprivation leads to other conditions in your daily life. You'll feel sleepy during the day and your cognitive abilities might plummet. Depression and anxiety have both been linked to insufficient sleep. We suggest talking with your doctor if you have more than one nightmare per week, if they're affecting your sleep, mood, and daily activities, or if they begin after starting a new medication. If you're having frequent nightmares, though, it's important you speak to a physician or mental health provider. You may also have some physical symptoms that lead to these nightmares.
A lot of individuals who have nightmare disorder, the nightmares are being precipitated by something else. A breathing disturbance, nocturnal acid reflux, a child with a little bit of sleep-related asthma or breathing disturbances.
Of course, it could be psychological too.
Is there underlying psychological issues that nightmare disorder is sort of dredging up? Like, why is that child having a nightmare disorder versus getting up and saying, wow, I dream a lot? Why are the dreams so negative?
And while this isn't sexy advice, the best thing you can do to limit your nightmares is make sure you're taking care of your mind and body before sleep. Stick to a consistent sleep schedule and make sure your bedroom is built for sleep. Keep it cool, dim, and quiet, and only use it for sex and sleep. Find ways to relax at night that don't involve screens. Meditation, breathing exercises, and light reading can help you de-stress and avoid nightmares. You might even think about keeping a journal at night where you can jot down quick thoughts or feelings about your day. Something to empty your mind and body before bed. And don't drink alcohol before bed. It can trigger a REM rebound once the booze wears off. Finally, avoid obvious stressors before bed like disturbing movies and TV shows. The blue light isn't doing you any favors, nor is the subject matter of a true crime documentary. Everyone has nightmares. They only become a problem when they keep you from getting restful sleep. Talk with your doctor if you have more than one nightmare a week. The lost sleep could lead to a handful of other health conditions. Finally, be open to therapy. Talk to someone about what's bothering you. It's not worth losing sleep over. And if you want to learn more about dreams, and specifically the fascinating world of lucid dreaming, check out our video about that right here. Thanks for watching, everyone. Sleep well.